Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see what if Misaki was sister of Issei Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Misaki-chan. I heard a girl whine, probably those girl from the kendo club. Once again, they were probably going to complain once again about my brother and his friends. I stared at my notes, I had a free period and I was not going to waste my study time. Misaki-chan. Please do something about your brother. The sigh escaped my lips and I turned my body to face them. What do you expect me to do? I asked Issei wouldn't stop if I told him to, if he didn't stop when you were all beating him with your shinai too near unconsciousness, what makes you think I can do something? You're his sister. The pink-haired one, Murayama I think was her name, or was that the brown-haired girl's name? Cried out. If it bothers you that much, I guess I'll try something. I guarantee nothing. I stated. They looked hopeful. Now can you leave? I'd like to finish studying. That was that. On my way home, I had no idea if I was paranoid or not, I felt like I was being watched. I clutched my bag a little tighter and walked faster. I looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Once I was at a small bridge I let out a breath of relief. I was close to home. Now if there really was someone staring at me from afar, if they could stop that, it would be great. I sped home and didn't stop until I was in front of my house's door. As I walked in, and my parents were chattering excitedly, Issei's shoes were at the door, so he was probably in his room. Tucking my shoes off, I walked in and placed my bag down. Misaki, can you believe it? My mother exclaimed, her voice filled with happiness. Believe what? Issei has a date. My father looked close to tears. Well, that was an unexpected development. No offense to my brother or anything, but he really was too much of a pervert that mom and dad thought he wouldn't get a girl to go out with him. I picked up my bag again, I don't even know why I put it down anyway, and I began walking up the stairs to my room. I could hear them from downstairs. For a second I thought our Misaki-chan would be the one who'd carry the Haidu name. I heard mom cry out. I raised an eyebrow, even if I did get married, which I doubted because you people, I would have the husband's name, not mine. I thought they were exaggerating a bit. They should have a little faith in him even though he was indeed a major pervert. He did do some not gentlemanly things. But I still had some hope that he was going to mature even if it was only a little bit. I wasn't going to tell him what those girls asked me about today, he's my brother, I wasn't that mean. I finished mostly everything, now it was a subject that I dreaded, math. I found it too complicated as soon as there were problems that it included letters. Math was supposed to have numbers. But still I put my book on my desk and took out my phone. I might as well do something other than frying my brain with all that thinking. Feeling a breeze, I glanced over my shoulder with slight surprise. I didn't remember leaving my window open, nor that I opened it since I came to my room. I stood up and went to close the window, I had that feeling that I was being watched again, I didn't like it. As soon as I closed my window, I made sure I locked it. That was just plain creepy. I didn't think about it too much, not like I could. Mom was calling Issei and I down for dinner. I gave one last look over my shoulder before I walked out of my room and went downstairs. Please don't tell me I'm going to be haunted by some ghosts or something. Sure, the idea itself would sound cool, but I wouldn't be so excited about it from what I've seen from those shows about haunted houses. No thank you. I adjusted my purse over my shoulder after I put away some of my breath mints as Issei clearly looked nervous. What if she doesn't come? What if she only asked me out as a joke? My poor brother continued to ramble on and on until I sighed and gave him a hard pat on the back. Oh, calm down, now you're just overthinking it, I began. Just remember what I told you. Don't be too much of a pervert and make sure you don't stare at her for too long, always try to think of something to talk about or she'll just get bored. Issei nodded quickly as well as looking around for his date. Her name was Yuumo Mono, from what he told me she seemed like a nice girl. Thank you. He muttered quietly. I'm your sister, it's my job to help my little brother out. I replied as I jokingly squished his cheek. He swatted my hand away, giving me a look. You were out 5 minutes earlier. I was still earlier, wasn't I? Whatever. I glanced at my phone's clock, almost noon. I should be going, your date is gonna be here soon. Just try not to be too nervous. I said as I was walking away and I heard him call out, I'll try not to. As I walked down the street and turned down a corner, once again I had the feeling that I was being watched. It has been happening since that day I learned that Issei was going on a date. Which was only a few days ago. Once I looked up, I saw some guy in a trench coat, wearing a hat that covered his eyes, but either way he seemed to be looking right at me. I paused mid-step. For a moment he seemed to be walking in my direction, but then he turned and continued on his way. Surprising myself, I let out a breath in relief that I was holding in. I continued on my way. I might as well go over a friend's house or something, I wasn't going to spend a whole Saturday by myself. Never mind. It seemed like all my friends were out and about. Here I was, alone. With absolutely nothing to do. I just made myself sad. Don't tell me I'm going to be that one person that was thought to have so much going for them, but then I end up working at some fast food place. That would just be a nightmare in itself. When I got home, I sadly saw people I wanted to avoid. The other two-thirds of the perverted trio, Mitsuda and Motohama. I couldn't help but shudder. Despite them being Issei's friends and promising my brother to show me at least some respect, it didn't mean that I was still free from their advancements. Just the having to deal with one of them made me mentally exhausted. Iromegane and Irobumzu creeped me out, just putting it out there. Especially Motohama's really unique ability to tell a girl's body measurements. I shifted around, hoping I could sneak in through the back door, and I inched closer and closer. Until. Ah. Misaki-chan. You look great as always. I internally screamed and cursed whatever deity that had given me the such luck of being near them. I slowly turned around and rubbed the back of my head. Now I sort of regret wearing a skirt today, since they would probably try whatever to see what was underneath it. Thank God the floral patterned skirt went at least near my knees. I had a sleeveless white button-up blouse that was tucked inside the skirt. Then plain white flats. Hey? I said as they had some bags with, from what I could see, were some DVDs. Oh God, it was those kinds of movies. I remember seeing one on accident. It was a terrible experience. So where's Issei? Mitsuda asked as he came up to me, a little too close for comfort. I had to fight the urge to protectively place my arms over my chest, and I cleared my throat. He's on his date with Yuma. So he's not gonna be back until later. I inched away. They instantly fell down. You guys knew this. Don't act so surprised. I had to suppress the urge to roll my eyes at their antics and hold back kicking them when they thought it would be a good time, since they were on the ground, to try and look under my skirt. Well, Issei's not home, I repeated, so what are you guys going to do? They stared at each other, almost contemplating something. Why couldn't the door be any closer? By the time the two of them left, I was tired. They decided to bother me instead. I was nice. Issei definitely owed me for that. The sun was almost fully set, so I had changed into some old clothes and just hung out in my room, watching whatever was interesting online. Mom and Dad went out, doing whatever it is that adults do. So I was home alone. I thankfully did not have that strange feeling earlier this week. So I felt pretty reassured. I felt pretty safe. Being at home. By myself. Alone. Crap. I really hate when I overthink things. That just makes me paranoid as well as jumpy. I was in the kitchen. It was already getting dark out, or so. Mom and Dad were back already, as well as them being asleep. I kept myself awake with my paranoia. So here I am now, making myself some tea. I waited until the tea cooled a little. Once that happened, my thoughts wandered to my brother. He was out since this afternoon. It was late. Normally he wasn't out this late, especially when he hung out with the other two. I brought my drink upstairs and just sat in my bed until my body decided to let me know it was time to sleep. Which surprisingly didn't take too long until after I finished my tea. I lay down properly and soon felt my eyes close. I had no idea if I was dreaming or if I was awake, but either way I swear I was hearing something downstairs. So being who I was, I decided to do the dumb thing and investigate. Smart idea, I know. The living room's lights were turned on, and I hid as best as I could before I went downstairs. I saw something really weird. Ria's Gremory and Akeno Himejima were in my house. Why would the great one Isama decide to grace my humble abode? Then I saw Kaneko Taoju, a masked, was with her. I raised an eyebrow, seeing a good portion, well actually almost all of the occult research club. Now we're just missing Yudo Kiba and we'd have the whole group. Where should I put him? Speak, well, think of the devil and he shall appear. Just lay him on the couch and I'll take care of the rest. Yes, but you? Then Kiba walked in. What the hell? But he was carrying someone. He was carrying my brother, and what caught my attention was that my brother was carried bridal style, but that he also had a large wound in his abdomen area and that he looked dead. Now would be a really good time to wake up from what I was really hoping was a dream. If only it actually was a dream. I woke up with a jolt. I was breathing heavily. I was in my room. Nothing seemed wrong. My alarm was ringing loudly and I winced at how loud it unusually was. Turning it off, I got up and got ready for school. I could worry about my weird dream later. My cup from my tea was still on my desk like it was yesterday before I fell asleep. I walked into the bathroom and turned the shower on, closing the door behind me. I tied my hair in a ponytail as I made my way downstairs, adjusting my bag strap and then placing it over my chair. I sat beside Dad and I begun to eat my breakfast only to stare at my brother, healthy and all, walking down the stairs as if he was lost. Whatever I saw yesterday couldn't have been anything but a dream. I must have been dreaming, because with such a wound Issei wouldn't be standing here at all. He wouldn't even be alive. Shaking my head from those thoughts, I continued my breakfast. However, the bad feeling in my chest wouldn't leave me. I ate my food quickly, said goodbye to mom and dad, and left without anything else. The day itself wasn't anything new, learned some new things, have to deal with girls whispering about my brother and how they felt bad. I honestly didn't care, but they were getting really annoying. Listen. I perked up slightly in the middle of class. No one was looking at me, they were paying attention to the teacher instead. I was the only one that heard it. Danger. I blinked, I rubbed my temple. Misaki-san? I heard the teacher ask, are you alright? I nodded quickly. Sorry, just a small headache, it'll pass. I assured her with a smile, and I looked down at my notes despite the fact that some people were staring at me. I couldn't wait to leave. Those 2 words were the only things I heard all day. What was there even to listen to? What danger? All I could think of was what I thought I saw yesterday, Issei being carried into the house, pretty much dead. I couldn't even concentrate on anything. So I stood up, grabbed my wallet and went downstairs, making my way to the door as my parents were looking at me oddly. I'm going out. I said and closed the door behind me without letting them answer. Thankfully I was dressed appropriately so that I didn't have to awkwardly turn around and change into different clothes. I was probably going to go to the nearby store and buy myself some snacks, then head home. I had no homework today, and I could do well without a night of studying. Advanced classes were more difficult than I thought. Seeing the light from the store, I walked in, the automatic doors closing behind me. A girl a little bit older, probably a college student or something along those lines, than me was working behind the register. She had long black hair, and some of her bangs were swept into a slight curve to the right. She seemed to be staring at me, but I didn't pay attention. She probably didn't realize she was staring at me. I got myself some chips, candy, and some soda. Perfect snacks, I tell you. When I went to the register, she rung up my purchases, and I paid and took my bags, leaving. However, when I looked through the corner of my eye, she was staring right at me. I felt a chill go down my back. I quickened my pace. It was dark out, but not enough to say that I was out too late. Besides, Issei was still hanging out with the 2 bozos, so if I got in trouble for being out so late, then he would probably get in trouble too. I heard a yell and I turning at that direction. I decided against going in that direction. It was better to take the safer way where there were more people and further away from whatever danger was going on. Wow, for the first time I listened to that advice people give about surviving horror movies. Help him. Okay, what is with that voice honestly? Hurry. I continued walking. When I turned the corner, I see what looked like the guy wearing the trench coat from yesterday. He was talking to my brother. My legs moved themselves closer. I froze as I hid behind a bush. Running away? I heard him ask. I have no clue what the hell is happening. I heard my brother yell and he ran. At least he could move. I saw feathers, pure black feathers, and one landed in front of me. I unknowingly reached out and picked it up while watching whatever confrontation was going on between my brother and the male in the trench coat. Was that guy flying? I would have run if I could, but it seemed like my legs weren't getting any signals from my brain to even let me walk. I was frozen in place. He let out a scoff as he landed in front of my brother, who barely even made a good distance away. Black feathered wings folding behind his back. This is why dealing with low-leveled ones are so boring. I still was able to hear whatever was going on. If this was a dream, I really wished I would wake up right about now. I can't sense the presence of a master nor ally. You must be a stray. Okay, now the weirdo had a blue sword in his hand. Everything seemed to slow down, and as soon as Issei even tried to run, he was pierced right the chest. Much to my surprise relief, Issei was still conscious, but he was bleeding pretty badly. That relief was soon short-lived because he had the blue-colored blade back in his hands and raised it to hit my brother. I covered my eyes. A loud crash, like glass shattering, ran out throughout. I flinched at the sound. I slowly uncovered my eyes. Standing next to my brother was Ria's Gremory, and she looked pissed off. My legs seemed to get what was going on because as soon as I walked, I left in a sprint, hoping to get home and pray that seeing my brother like that was seriously a dream. I didn't want to stick around and see who else would arrive. As I ran, I bumped into someone. They seemed to wear the traditional kimono. They had black hair and a gold bangs and a black goatee. Manners could be saved for later. Sorry. I said quickly before they could say anything, and I continued running. Heading home, Mom and Dad weren't in the living room, so I just ran upstairs, skipping a step or two. I just placed whatever I bought on the desk and plopped on my bed, not even bothering to change. I was exhausted, I was scared, and I just wanted to sleep. It's okay. I felt a warm presence around me as I closed my eyes. My surroundings were bright white. As my eyes adjusted, I looked around. The sky wasn't the normal blue, instead of a gold color, mixing with hues of orange and pink. The clouds were a light gray, and they literally did have a silver outline. I was in a patch of grass, the rest of my surroundings were some trees and mountains. A few feet away there was a lone chair, with a table in front of it, then a chair behind the table. A table for two, I guess. You're finally here. I turned only to be enveloped in a hug. When I was in arms distance, which wasn't too long. I saw a man, with short, scruffy, white hair that sort of stuck out in many places. If I was not freaked out already, I would have thought he was cute. He had pink eyes, and his outfit reminded me of a male belly dancer. He had the white baggy pants, his arms had white cuffs with intricate gold markings. He didn't have a shirt. That made me turn more red than a ripe tomato. I looked away, a blush was evident on my face, the man didn't seem to notice, he just seemed really happy. Still, I was a little curious why he was so touchy-feely. Do you mind, I dunno, letting go? I asked shyly. The man blinked until a look of realization came over his face. Oh right. He exclaimed, of course you don't know me yet, I'm your sacred gear. He said that as if it was common fact. I stared, I wasn't exactly sure what a sacred gear even was, I doubted I even wanted to know at all either. The white-haired male seemed to sense my uncertainty, as a knowing smile came across his features. Well, we're going to be here for a while. I was led to that table I saw earlier. I couldn't help but have the feeling of having to brace myself. My eyes opened, I wasn't in the forest-like surroundings anymore, instead I was actually in my room. I was probably insane or something, because there was no actual way that there was a man living in my head. How wrong I actually was. Misaki. The morning was pretty normal so far. I came downstairs and ate breakfast with Dad. Issei was sleeping late, so Mom went to go wake him up so that he wasn't going to be any more late than he already was. At least Kuo Academy didn't begin at the literal crack of dawn. Maybe that's why some kids like to go, that or to just see the girls in their gym uniforms. It could even be both depending on the day. I took a drink from my glass of juice, then all of a sudden I heard Mom scream and I choked from the shock. I coughed as Dad tried to help me, while trying to console my mother on whatever frightened her. What's wrong? Was Issei caught with his porn magazines again? Okay, that was a piece of information that I really did not want to know. It was a foreign woman. I stopped joking thankfully, as I along with Dad shared a look and stared at Mom in curiosity. Mom, what do you mean, a foreign woman? I asked, an eyebrow raised. Calm down, what about intercourse? Dad cried out, beginning to freak out as well. I stared at both my parents in amazement. Intercourse? I swear this was going to give Mom gray hairs if she didn't have any already. It is a foreigner. It's international. My jaw lowered in confusion as I just stared as they freaked out. But then I closed my mouth, inhaled deeply, then exhaled. I went back to the table and put my head in my hands. This was officially weird. I did not like the attention I was getting just because Issei and I were walking to school with Ria's Gremory to school. So as soon as I entered the school building, I left quickly to my class. However, that didn't stop the people from my class from asking me everything about it. You joined the occult research club. That's hardest club to get in. Is your brother dating Ria's? No way. Ria's Onisama would never willingly go with that pervert. When I sat down in my seat, I groaned as I lay my head in my arms. I wanted to go home now. This was already getting old and an hour hadn't even passed. I was glad school was over. If one more person asked if my brother had done something to Ria's, I would have hit someone. Those people really ask a lot of questions. I blinked, wait, aw man. That guy wasn't just my imagination. I continued walking, however I replied, it's really annoying. After a small moment of silence, I tilted my head. Just what is your name anyway? I asked. Well, I don't know exactly, he trailed off. None of my other past wielders have given me a proper name. Oh. Well, is there a name that you like? Not that I am aware of. He replied. I contemplated the thought and then I thought of the kind of power he had described we now had. Then I came up with one. How about Aaron? I suggested. He himself seemed to be thinking about it and I soon made it near home as I took out my house key from my bag. I like it, he said, sounding happy. Aaron it is then. I told him with a small smile. When I touched the knob, the door was already open. So I just walked in. Mom was in the kitchen, Dad was probably still at work. Issei was somewhere. I went up to my room. Issei. This girl is Yuma Amano, isn't she? I was shell-shocked. First, everyone acted as if Yuma-chan hadn't even existed, and then all of a sudden, I'm told that I'm a devil. Ria's butchu seemed to be waiting on my answer. I cleared my throat. But no one's even heard of her. It's like she disappeared. I exclaimed. That is probably because of her magic. Magic? That's how I was able to convince your parents that nothing happened. Ria's explained, but her brows creased however. I'm surprised, I couldn't really do anything to your sister. What do you mean? It was like she knew I was going to cast a spell, she had a protective barrier around herself. The red-haired woman trailed off. Well anyway, your supposed girlfriend was a fallen angel. You were hunted down because of something inside you. Your sacred gear. If this was a dream, I couldn't wait until I was pinched awake. Hell, even a punch to the face would be better. That couldn't happen because sadly, this was real. But that also meant I could hang around the Great One Isama. But Suda and Motohama can take that for leaving me alone to face the wrath of the Kendo Club. But why would she go after me? I asked numbly. Once again a long explanation awaited me. Unknown. Do you really think that girl is ready? I heard a voice beside me say. I only nodded. She has already awakened her sacred gear, I believe she can do this. I replied, waving a dismissive hand. What are you going to do about the 4 troublemakers? They asked. They'll be dealt with accordingly, I replied. You ask too many questions. Whatever. Misaki. Stifling a yawn, I walked to school earlier. Why? I don't know, but I just had a strange feeling, so I took a safe bet and hurried to school. Hey. A voice called. It probably wasn't for me, hopefully. You're Misaki Haidu, aren't you? When I looked up, I yelped in surprise. Seeing a tall man wearing a traditional kimono. He had black hair with blonde highlights and a goatee. Maybe I am, who are you? I asked, backing away. I gripped my bag tightly. The man let out a chuckle. I eyed him warily. As he approached me, I felt like my feet were glued to the ground. So much for running. Oh, don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. Yes, because that would definitely make me trust him more. You didn't answer my question. I said, trying to sound threatening. Oh, excuse my manners, my name is Azazel, and your new tutor. What? Issei. Hopefully I'll see you around, Issei-san. I heard Asia say as I left to go to school. I waved me too. I jogged so I wouldn't be late. I had met a girl named Asia, who was a sister, this morning on the way to school. She was really cute too. I would have went with her into the church, but as soon I was even near it, I felt a pit in my stomach. So I quickly made up an excuse and left as fast as I could. I did feel guilty when I did leave though. Making my way closer to the school helped me feel a little better. But I still had that feeling. Of course I would. I was a devil near a church. How much more suspicious could you get? When I got to class, I didn't pay attention to what the teacher was saying, but all I did know was that my thoughts were on Asia. I was worried about her. Later. What do you mean no? Exactly as I said. No, I cannot allow you to see that sister, nor go near that church. It's far too dangerous for a devil to be even seen by one. But you exclaimed. Before I could even reply, I felt myself land on the heaven called Ria's Gremory's chest. But I blinked in confusion, snapping out of my stupor. But you had me worried, I heard her say softly. Her hand running through my hair. Please don't ever do that again. Despite the warmth in her tone, I knew she meant business. You're lucky that no one had taken action against you, not like I'd let that happen anyway, just because you brought that Asia girl there. I nodded slowly. This reminded me of how mom used to scold me when I was younger for looking up some lady's skirt. But this was different. Misaki. I felt my lungs were going to burst. I'm never doing a sport ever again. You're almost done. I heard Azazel call out as he held a timer in his hands. I looked over my shoulder, giving the dual-colored man a hard glare who said, I even wanted to start. Crossing an imaginary line, I felt the scenery around me change. Instead of the open field Azazel and I were in, it looked like I was in one of the old districts. It was nighttime, and I was alone. Aaron? I felt myself ask with a shiver. I wasn't in my uniform, just some old gym shorts and a white t-shirt. At least this outfit actually had shorts, not underwear-looking things unlike the one at school. Yes. Just where are we? Azazel was nowhere to be found, and I wasn't going to stay in the same place. I don't know myself either. He replied, sounding just as confused as I did. That was concerning. Well, we're going to have to get out of here. As I finished those thoughts, I heard a screech and on instinct covered my ears. So you're the one who Azazel sent to me as a fine and dine. A deep voice boomed. Not bad. Blinking, my eyes couldn't believe it. That bastard set me up. Turning around, I couldn't believe my eyes. This creature was quite literally towering over me. It had pitch black fur, pieces of it were white, crystallized looking. It was chilly, and I was kind of wishing I had some sweatpants. Hello? I stared up the tri-headed creature, and I felt sweat fall down my neck. I felt a pit grow in my stomach. Before I could even blink, a black wall, flickering like flames, appeared in front of me, and I felt immense heat radiating off of it. Step into it. I heard Aaron command. Are you crazy? As far as I know, that is a fire, and I will not be charred to death. Just do it. The Cerberus snarled, baring its fangs. A spear of ice hit the flames, freezing them completely in that instant. Who would have thought? Cerberus exclaimed, not only are you going to be a good snack, but to think you wielded such a sacred gear like this one. They laughed. I stared at the dog-like creature, blinking. He or she, who knows anyway, snorted and laughed again. How foolish of you, you come here and challenge me without knowing of the weapon you wield. No, I answered a little too quickly. Foolish girl. More ice spears came my way. I ran. You can run as much as you want, but you will tire yourself, weak human. They're probably just all talk, you big puppy. I called, continuing to run and avoid as many spears as possible. With Aaron's help, we were able to melt the ones that nearly hit me. That probably was not a good idea, as the Cerberus grew agitated and the amount of spears it let out increased tenfold. It shouted all kinds of profanities at me, and I was shocked. Some of those were words I haven't heard before. I think I know of a way to defeat this thing, I heard Aaron say. That would have been helpful 5 minutes ago. I was thinking and thought of possible outcomes. Now first we have to get out of its line of sight. That was easier said than done. My lungs were probably going to burst by the end of the night. The Cerberus was relentless, and like how they said, I was running out of stamina. So currently I hid in a dilapidated building. My ragged breaths were one of the rare sounds here, other than the loud footsteps the gigantic creature took. So what's your plan? I asked Aaron. My breathing was returning to normal. The Cerberus has its 3 heads covered in ice, a way to protect itself. I nodded. Well, if you can destroy the ice, then you could give it some good damage. But you have to do it quickly, or else they'll catch on with what we're doing. Once again, it was all easier said than done. Misaki. I felt myself crashing into one of the old buildings. Had it not been for Aaron putting up some of his black flames, I most likely would have broken something important. I stood up on shaky legs, and it didn't help that my side was bruised. I could hear the Cerberus laughing. I sent them a glare. You're weak, the Cerberus boomed, even for a wielder of the left eye. The what? The what? I asked Aaron, while using a piece of large debris to fully stand. It seems that was what I was called before you gave me a name, he replied, although he did sound a bit unsure too. Well, at least we know now than later. You have a point. Do not ignore me. Cerberus boomed out. Just who do you think you are? I do know that you need some breath mints. I wrinkled my nose. Some frost came out as the Cerberus yelled. As soon as one of the 3 heads comes near you, I want you to jump on top of it. Aaron's voice was filled with authority. And risk being swallowed and eaten alive? No thanks. Misaki. Alright, fine. But if I die? You're not going to die. What kind of sacred gear would I be if I didn't help my possessor? You'd be a terrible one. I replied, and as if on cue, the middle head, followed by the one on the right and then on the left, came right at me. With Aaron's help, I used some wind to help me jump higher as I landed on the head on the middle. With my shadows, we can crack the ice, break it off and cause some damage, Aaron explained, and a black sword, with a handle that seemed to wrap around my arm, appeared in my hand. The black line had intricate designs as it faded into my skin, reaching my shoulders. I swung the sword and held onto the fur as the Cerberus caught onto the plan. You shouldn't have done that. Now I am truly angry. Just hold onto it really tightly, Aaron exclaimed. I can't really crack the ice without letting go and falling off. I yelled back. If this was what horseback riding was, then I never wanted to do it. Ever. Azazel. I couldn't help but laugh in amazement. The left eye user was really creative in tactics. Then when I heard a loud crack, I couldn't help but wince on how sick it felt. That's gonna leave a mark on the Cerberus at least. To my surprise, the girl was strong despite how recently she had awakened the left eye. It must be because of her brother, the Sekiruyute. This was getting more and more interesting each day. I think I'll look more forward into her training. This is ridiculous, to think I was taken down by such a weak human. I don't think you really can say that I'm weak, I heard Misaki say, and I blinked, seeing the sword on her arm dissipate. But you really were strong though. I think you broke something. The Cerberus snorted. I will admit, you are strong. I give you my blessing to wield me. However, if you show any inkling of weakness, be it mental or physical, I will devour you. You can make sure on that. Then I'll just make sure I'm up to your standards, and you can count on that. The Cerberus creature was shrinking until it was small enough to be held in someone's hand. It was now into its devil arm form, an ice whip. The handle was pure silver with a small emblem, the 3 heads of the Cerberus, outlined in the ice blue color it had wielded in its monster form. It was decorated with small ice decorations hanging off of the handle. The whip itself was a pure blue with some black spots here and there, and the tip was spiked. To someone who did not wield it, it was cold to the touch and would probably give the worst frostbite ever. However, when she held it, nothing happened. It was time for me to make my appearance, so getting off from the building I was on, I applauded. My wings were out, allowing me to land near her. This was a surprising outcome. You were creative in defeating the Cerberus. Misaki was silent for a moment, and I honestly thought she passed out standing up, which I've seen happen before. Oi. She was quiet again. Boy. Silence. Boy, girl. She stood quiet. I snapped my fingers in front of her face, only for her to kick me in the stomach. It took me off guard. What was that for? What do you mean what was that for? She yelled out, tackling me to the ground. The black sword from earlier was in her hand. Again, you sent me here and I could have died. Okay, the good news was that she was conscious. However, the bad news was she was pissed off. But you didn't, did you? I asked, staring back at her with a small grin. Thankfully I didn't, so then I can kick your ass next. Despite being a normal, well not really, high school girl, I was a little frightened by the kind of aura she was radiating. I heard some laughter behind me. Wow, to think you could just be on the ground due to a regular teenage girl. Of course it was him. What is it now, Volley? Misaki. I wanted to kick his ass into next week. Wow, to think you could just be on the ground due to a regular teenage girl. Looking up and pausing mid-punch, I couldn't help but stare at Azazel and then to the guy who he called Volley. Who are you? I asked, and if it was any other time, I probably would have been a little more polite, but right now, because of Azazel, I was in a bad mood. He joined us on ground level, ignoring my question. A visible smirk was on his face. I didn't know if it was just because of my bad mood, but I didn't really have a good feeling about him. I heard Azazel sigh underneath me. What is it now, Volley? So I am guessing you'll continue your training? He asked. Azazel only nodded. Much to my annoyance, Azazel pat my head. You did good. You didn't die. The silver-haired male known as Volley said to me. I raised an eyebrow. Thank you. I seriously could not tell whether or not I should be flattered or if I should be offended. Either way, I stood up and I didn't bother helping Azazel up. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I am going home and I am not waking up until 5 in the afternoon. I waved goodbye and walked in a random direction, the ice whip wrapped around my waist like a belt. It was silent for a few minutes. I heard that Volley guy snort. Do you even know where you're going at all? Nope, not at all. That's when I collapsed. Volley. I adjusted the sleeping girl in my arms, Azazel leading me to her home. This is where my rival is too, isn't it? I asked Azazel with sudden interest. Yes it is, he replied, but it's far too early for you to time him. He isn't fully ready yet. Wouldn't you say the same for the girl too? I raised an eyebrow. Yes, I would actually, since nothing really has triggered her awakening, only going a little bit faster due to the current demons in the area. Other than that, it probably would have taken her a few years to do it had I not used the Cerberus to help her. But you also got sucker punched to the ground. Oh, quite you. Azazel had opened the window. I jumped in, my blue and silver wings disappearing as I landed on the floor. For a girl's room, it wasn't actually too girly. Placing her gently on the bed, Azazel and I left the room, closing the window behind us and then flying off. I'm going to go train. I told Azazel as I went to go in another direction. He gave me a nod. Don't overexert yourself like last time then. With a chuckle he flew off. I rolled my eyes. I had my own business to take care of now. End of the part 1 here. So how was the story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.